She had I'm sure, her periods of quite, desolate behaviour and desolate feelings because, you go any place you go, there's somebody following you with a camera.
Elton John, one of the most celebrated figures in the music world and a close friend of Princess Diana, recently stirred global attention by shedding light on long-standing conspiracy theories surrounding her tragic death. His statements, while shocking, have reignited public fascination and debate over the mysterious circumstances of the fatal car crash in Paris on August 31, 1997. For years, whispers of a cover-up have permeated public discourse. But Elton John's revelations have added a new layer of gravity to these theories, suggesting that Diana's death may have been orchestrated by powerful forces rather than the result of a simple accident. Before we start, smash the like and subscribe buttons for more updates. The official narrative of Diana's death attributes the crash to a high-speed chase involving aggressive paparazzi and the intoxicated state of the driver, Henri Paul. However, from the outset, inconsistencies in the story raised eyebrows. The delay in medical intervention, unusual behaviors of security personnel, and conflicting eyewitness accounts planted seeds of doubt that never quite dissipated. Diana herself, known for her candor and vulnerability, had reportedly expressed fears of a plot against her, a sentiment that Elton John confirmed with chilling specificity. According to him, Diana confided in her closest friends about her growing concerns over threats to her safety, particularly as her life veered further from the royal fold. The possibility of an inside job centers on Diana's evolving public image and her increasing independence from the British monarchy. By the mid-1990s, Diana had transformed from a dutiful royal into a global humanitarian icon, championing causes that rattled traditional power structures. Her anti-landmine campaign, in particular, positioned her as a threat to the arms trade, a sector tightly interwoven with geopolitical interests and high-ranking officials. Elton John's remarks emphasized how Diana's prominence and fearless activism might have unsettled those who sought to maintain the status quo. Could her death have been a calculated move to silence a disruptive force? For many, the implications of this theory are both unsettling and plausible. Beyond her activism, Diana's personal life was another flashpoint of controversy. Her divorce from Prince Charles had already sent shockwaves through the royal establishment, and her romantic involvement with Dodi Fayed, an Egyptian businessman, further fueled speculation. The notion of a future King William or King Harry potentially having a stepfather from a Muslim background was said to have caused unease within the upper echelons of British society. Elton John alluded to how Diana's burgeoning relationship with Fayed might have intensified animosities, portraying her as a figure whose actions increasingly diverged from royal expectations. This, according to proponents of the conspiracy, could have provided a motive for orchestrating her untimely demise. Key to these theories is the environment in which Diana found herself during her final days. Paris, a city synonymous with romance and glamour, became the stage for her fatal encounter with danger. Elton John highlighted the peculiarity of events leading up to the crash, including the decision to leave the Ritz Hotel via a back exit and the choice of Henri Paul as their driver. Paul, who was later found to have an alarming blood alcohol level, also had connections to intelligence agencies, a detail that conspiracy theorists have latched onto as evidence of a premeditated plot. If Elton John's statements are to be believed, these peculiarities were not coincidences, but orchestrated elements of a larger scheme to eliminate Diana and Dodi. The infamous Alma Tunnel, where the crash occurred, has also been a focal point of intrigue. Conspiracy theorists argue that the location offered a perfect site for a covert operation, given its limited visibility and controlled access points. Eyewitnesses reported seeing bright flashes of light moments before the crash, a detail that aligns with theories of a deliberate attempt to disorient the driver. Elton John's comments have lent credibility to such claims, as he suggested that the tunnel provided the ideal setting for those aiming to avoid public scrutiny, whether by tampering with the vehicle, orchestrating the involvement of a second car, or deploying blinding light. The theories propose a chilling level of premeditation. Elton John's insight also casts a shadow over the investigation that followed Diana's death. Critics have long argued that the inquiry lacked transparency, with key pieces of evidence either dismissed or downplayed. For instance, CCTV footage from the Ritz Hotel was incomplete, raising questions about what might have been deliberately excluded. The absence of a thorough forensic analysis of the wrecked Mercedes-Benz added further fuel to the fire. While the official inquest ultimately concluded that the crash was a result of reckless driving, Elton John's assertions suggest that the full truth may have been suppressed to protect those in positions of power. Diana's status as the people's princess made her an unparalleled figure of both adoration and controversy. Her authenticity, compassion, and willingness to address taboos drew admiration from millions, but also invited scrutiny and resentment from influential circles. Elton John touched on the broader implications of her death, reflecting on how her loss was not merely a personal tragedy, but a seismic event that shook public trust in institutions. If her death was indeed an orchestrated act, as the conspiracy theories suggest, it would mark one of the darkest chapters in modern history, a breach of trust so profound that its ramifications would ripple through generations. The alleged orchestration of Diana's death also raises ethical and moral questions about the lengths to which individuals or institutions might go to preserve their power and reputation. Elton John's statements force us to confront uncomfortable possibilities about the fragility of life, even for someone as beloved and seemingly untouchable as Diana. In a world where power dynamics often operate behind closed doors, the idea that someone could be targeted for challenging the status quo serves as a stark reminder of the dangers faced by those who dare to defy convention. It is this unsettling tension that continues to captivate and divide public opinion. At the heart of these revelations lies a profound sense of injustice, one that echoes through the lives of Diana's sons, Prince William and Prince Harry. As young boys, they not only had to grapple with the devastating loss of their mother, but also grew up under the shadow of unanswered questions. Elton John's remarks further complicate their narrative, adding a layer of doubt that their mother's death might not have been the result of random misfortune, but a calculated act. While this remains speculation, the implications are deeply personal and resonate on a global scale. Despite the controversies surrounding her death, Diana's legacy endures. Elton John's revelations invite us to reflect on how her life and work transcended the boundaries of royal protocol to touch the lives of millions. She was more than a princess. She was a symbol of hope, humanity, and courage in the face of adversity. Her untimely death, shrouded in mystery and suspicion, has become a touchstone for broader discussions about accountability, transparency, and the limits of institutional power. In drawing attention to these issues, Elton John has sparked a renewed quest for clarity and closure. Elton John's revelations about Princess Diana's death bring into focus not just the controversial theories surrounding her fatal crash, but also the broader socio-political implications of her life and untimely demise. For decades, her death has been a symbol of unresolved questions, and the recent statements by one of her closest confidants compel us to examine the circumstances with renewed scrutiny. They also bring to light the cultural, psychological, and institutional factors that made Diana both a beloved public figure and a potential target for those threatened by her growing independence. The idea of an inside job suggests a sophisticated, multi-layered operation orchestrated by entities with significant influence, resources, and motives. If Diana's death was premeditated, it would imply the involvement of individuals or groups who not only possessed logistical capability, but also had a vested interest in eliminating her. Elton John's commentary hints at a high-stakes game of control, where the stakes extended beyond personal vendettas to issues of national and international consequence. The level of precision and secrecy required for such an operation points toward institutional complicity, which raises troubling questions about the extent of hidden power structures and the ethical boundaries they may have crossed. The car crash in the Alma Tunnel stands as a stark reminder of the risks Diana faced, simply for being who she was. This was not the first time she had encountered danger. In the years leading up to her death, she had reportedly experienced numerous threats and instances of surveillance. Her phone lines were allegedly tapped, and her movements were closely monitored by both the media and possibly other unseen forces. Such invasive scrutiny was not just an inconvenience. It was a clear sign that she had become a figure of immense interest and, perhaps, a perceived liability to those invested in maintaining certain narratives. Elton John's revelations add weight to the idea that Diana lived under a constant shadow of danger, a reality that few understood fully during her lifetime. The role of the British royal family in the conspiracy theories cannot be ignored, even if direct involvement remains unproven. The monarchy, as an institution, represents centuries of tradition and continuity. Diana's public image, however, often clashed with the carefully curated image of the royal family. Her openness about mental health struggles, her emotional candidness, and her willingness to challenge royal norms made her a beloved figure among the public, but also a disruptive force within the monarchy. Elton John's insights suggest that Diana's divergence from royal expectations may have been more than a personal journey. It may have been perceived as a threat to the very foundation of the institution. One of the most provocative aspects of the conspiracy theories is the suggestion that Diana's death was timed to halt her burgeoning humanitarian influence. By the mid-1990s, Diana had established herself as a global advocate for causes like HIV/AIDS awareness and the campaign against landmines. These efforts not only humanized her, but also positioned her as a powerful agent of change on the international stage. Elton John's reflections indicate that her advocacy may have drawn the ire of powerful individuals and entities who viewed her as a destabilizing force. Her campaign against landmines in particular challenged the interests of governments and corporations profiting from the arms trade, a realm where financial and political power intertwine in deeply entrenched ways. Diana's evolving personal life further complicated matters. Her relationship with Dodi Fayed, a man of Middle Eastern descent, was more than a romantic union. It was a symbolic challenge to racial and cultural barriers. This relationship occurred at a time when racial and religious prejudices were more overtly expressed, particularly within elite circles. Elton John's assertions about the implications of Diana and Dodi's relationship suggest that their union may have been seen as unacceptable by those seeking to preserve a specific vision of the monarchy and its future. The idea of Diana marrying Dodi and potentially having children with him posed a challenge to the traditionalist worldview that some might have been desperate to protect. One cannot overlook the role of the media in shaping the events leading up to Diana's death. The paparazzi's relentless pursuit of her car in the moments before the crash has been widely criticized, but Elton John's remarks hint at something more insidious. Was the media's involvement simply the result of an unquenchable thirst for sensationalism, or was it part of a broader scheme to push Diana into a vulnerable position? The symbiotic yet toxic relationship between Diana and the media, characterized by both her use of the press to communicate her truth and her victimization by its excesses, creates a complex backdrop against which her death is analyzed. The public's fascination with conspiracy theories surrounding Diana's death stems not only from the tragic circumstances, but also from the archetype she represents. She was a figure of immense beauty, grace, and compassion who lived a life full of contradictions. She was a princess who lived a fairy tale, yet endured profound emotional pain. She was a mother fiercely protective of her sons, yet vulnerable to the pressures of her public role. Elton John's insights remind us that Diana's life and death are a study in contrasts, of light and shadow, love and betrayal, power and vulnerability. This duality makes the mystery of her death all the more compelling. Another layer of intrigue lies in the geopolitical climate of the time. Diana's humanitarian work often intersected with global politics, making her a significant player on the world stage. Her ability to draw attention to issues like the AIDS crisis and landmines transcended borders and brought uncomfortable truths to light. Elton John's reflections suggest that her growing international influence may have been perceived as a liability by entities invested in maintaining a certain balance of power. If her death was indeed an inside job, it may have been motivated by fears that her activism could disrupt these carefully maintained dynamics. The implications of Elton John's revelations extend beyond Diana's death to broader questions about power, corruption, and accountability. They force us to confront uncomfortable truths about the nature of authority and the lengths to which those in power might go to protect their interests. The idea that a beloved public figure like Diana could have been the target of a calculated operation shakes the foundation of trust in institutions that are supposed to serve the public good. It raises the specter of a world where human lives can be sacrificed in the service of political or financial gain. Elton John's comments also invite us to reflect on the personal toll of living under such intense scrutiny and danger. Diana's life was marked by both extraordinary privilege and profound isolation. Her struggles with mental health, her battles with the press, and her complicated relationships with those around her paint a picture of a woman who was both deeply loved and deeply misunderstood. The possibility that her death was orchestrated adds a tragic dimension to her story, underscoring the vulnerability that can come with immense fame and influence. The narrative of Diana's death has become a cultural touchstone, inspiring books, documentaries, and countless debates. Elton John's revelations add a new layer to this narrative, prompting us to reconsider what we thought we knew about that fateful night in Paris. They challenge us to look beyond the surface and question the official accounts, to seek out the hidden truths that may lie beneath. In doing so, they reaffirm the enduring power of Diana's legacy, a legacy that continues to inspire and provoke even decades after her passing. The significance of these revelations lies not only in their potential to uncover new truths, but also in their ability to ignite broader discussions about justice and accountability. If Diana's death was indeed the result of a calculated operation, it represents a profound betrayal of public trust and a stark reminder of the fragility of life in the face of power. It forces us to confront the darker aspects of human nature and the systems we have built, systems that are meant to protect but can sometimes destroy. Elton John's recent remarks about Princess Diana's death have added new dimensions to the ongoing discourse surrounding her tragic end. While conspiracy theories have always surrounded her fatal car crash in the Alma Tunnel, John's comments point to a deliberate, systematic attempt to alter the course of her life through her demise. These revelations beg a deeper examination into the complexities of her life and the socio-political forces that may have converged against her. Understanding the nuanced implications of her death necessitates a broader look into the forces at play, the interconnected web of influence, and the socio-historical context in which her life unraveled. Diana's position as an outsider within the British royal family played a central role in the turbulence that characterized her life. While she was technically an aristocrat before marrying Prince Charles, her upbringing bore little resemblance to the insular world of royalty. Diana's warmth, relatability, and candid demeanor stood in stark contrast to the formality and rigidity of royal protocols. This disparity grew more apparent as she became an increasingly independent figure, one who wasn't afraid to address controversial topics such as mental health, marital discord, and humanitarian crises. Elton John's observations imply that this divergence placed her in direct conflict with powerful individuals invested in maintaining the monarchy's traditional image. At the height of her popularity, Diana was arguably the most photographed and followed woman in the world. Her magnetic presence and unfiltered honesty captivated the public, earning her a level of adoration that was often unmatched even by members of the royal family. This adulation, while endearing to millions, became a double-edged sword. It painted her as an uncontrollable variable within a highly controlled institution, one that relies heavily on curated public perception. Elton John's statements suggest that this growing disparity may have made her a liability to those who saw her as veering too far from the established order. In addition to her personal challenges with the royal family, Diana's humanitarian work disrupted deeply entrenched economic and political systems. Her campaign against landmines is a notable example, as it directly opposed the interests of powerful stakeholders within the arms industry. At the time of her death, Diana had become the face of the global anti-landmine movement, traveling to countries like Angola and Bosnia to meet victims of landmine explosions and advocate for their removal. Her work brought unprecedented attention to the human cost of war and placed pressure on governments and corporations involved in the production and sale of these deadly devices. Elton John's confirmation of the conspiracy theories surrounding her death suggests that her activism, which shined a spotlight on inconvenient truths, may have made her a target for those who stood to lose billions from her influence. Another important facet to explore is the role of intelligence agencies and their possible involvement. Conspiracy theorists have long pointed to the actions of intelligence organizations, suggesting that they may have monitored Diana extensively, given her prominence and controversial relationships. Elton John's assertions bring this notion into sharper focus. It has been suggested that Diana's communications were routinely intercepted, her movements tracked, and her personal life scrutinized by shadowy operatives working behind the scenes. These claims align with the idea that her death might not have been the result of mere negligence or happenstance, but rather the culmination of carefully orchestrated efforts to neutralize her perceived threat. One of the more overlooked elements in this complex tapestry is the geopolitical climate of the late 20th century, a period marked by shifting power dynamics and heightened global tensions. Diana's international advocacy placed her at the intersection of competing interests, particularly in regions where political instability and economic exploitation were rampant. Her high-profile visits to war-torn areas brought international attention to issues that many governments preferred to keep out of the public eye. Her involvement in these areas wasn't just symbolic. It had real-world implications that threatened to disrupt the delicate balance of power maintained by both state and corporate actors. Elton John's remarks suggest that her growing global influence, particularly in these volatile areas, may have been perceived as too dangerous to tolerate. In the months leading up to her death, Diana's personal life had also become a subject of intense scrutiny, with her relationship with Dodi Fayed drawing widespread attention. The couple's public appearances, coupled with speculation about their future plans, fueled media frenzy and royal anxiety alike. Some conspiracy theorists argue that the relationship symbolized a departure from the traditional norms associated with the British monarchy. Dodi, the son of Egyptian billionaire Mohammed Al Fayed, represented a world that diverged significantly from the predominantly Western Christian backdrop of the royal institution. Elton John's insights suggest that this relationship may have intensified concerns among those invested in preserving the monarchy's carefully guarded image, thereby contributing to the motivations behind any alleged plot against her. The logistics of the fatal car crash in the Alma Tunnel also remain a key point of contention. Eyewitness reports, unexplained anomalies, and the apparent mishandling of the investigation have been widely criticized. Elton John's comments reignite questions about the events of that night, particularly the role of Henry Paul, the driver of the vehicle. Paul's connections to intelligence agencies and the suspicious circumstances of his employment at the Ritz Hotel have fueled theories that he may have been more than just a driver on the night of the crash. Some have argued that his intoxication levels, as reported in the official investigation, may have been exaggerated or fabricated to divert blame from more sinister forces at play. The tunnel itself, with its limited surveillance and confined layout, remains a focal point for those who believe the crash was not an accident, but a calculated operation. Another compelling aspect of Elton John's revelations is the broader psychological impact of Diana's death on public consciousness. Her death marked a pivotal moment in modern history, one that shattered the illusion of invulnerability often associated with public figures. The outpouring of grief that followed her passing was unprecedented, as millions around the world mourned the loss of a woman they felt they knew personally. This collective mourning was also accompanied by a collective questioning of institutions, of power, and of the hidden mechanisms that govern society. Elton John's comments revive this questioning, suggesting that the very systems designed to protect and serve may have played a role in perpetuating tragedy. In examining the conspiracy theories surrounding Diana's death, it's crucial to explore the role of the press in shaping public perception. The paparazzi, who relentlessly pursued Diana in life and tragically in death, have often been scapegoated for their role in the fatal chase. However, Elton John's remarks imply that their presence may have been more than opportunistic. Could certain media figures have been complicit in a broader scheme to discredit or endanger Diana? The relationship between the press and the monarchy has always been fraught with tension, but Diana's case takes this dynamic to a new level, raising questions about the media's role as both a watchdog and potentially an instrument of manipulation. The idea that Diana's death was an orchestrated event also highlights the concept of controlled narratives. Public figures, especially those with significant influence, often find themselves at the mercy of narratives crafted by powerful interests. Diana, however, was unique in her ability to disrupt these narratives, using her platform to communicate her own truth. Whether it was through her famous interviews, her candid discussions about mental health, or her unflinching advocacy for marginalized communities, Diana consistently defied expectations. Elton John's reflections suggest that this ability to control her own narrative may have made her a target as it threatened to unravel the carefully constructed stories that sustain systems of power. One of the most poignant aspects of Diana's legacy is her role as a mother. Her devotion to her sons, Prince William and Prince Harry, was evident in every aspect of her life. She sought to shield them from the pressures of royal life while instilling in them a sense of compassion and humility. The implications of her death extend deeply into their lives, shaping their worldviews and influencing their paths as public figures. Elton John's revelations cast a shadow over the narrative they've inherited, suggesting that their mother's death may not have been the random tragedy it was portrayed to be, but rather the result of deliberate and sinister actions. This reframing of their loss adds a layer of complexity to their ongoing struggles with public and personal identity. The enduring fascination with Diana's death also speaks to the broader human need for closure. Tragic events, particularly those involving beloved figures, often leave behind a void filled with questions, speculation, and unresolved grief. Elton John's remarks tap into this collective yearning for answers, encouraging a deeper examination of the facts and theories surrounding her demise. In doing so, they challenge us to confront uncomfortable truths about the nature of power, privilege, and the potential for systemic corruption. Furthermore, the theories surrounding Diana's death highlight the role of secrecy and concealment in maintaining power structures. Institutions often operate under a veil of opacity, making it difficult to discern where truth ends and deception begins. Diana's life and the mystery of her death offers a rare glimpse into the tensions between public transparency and private machinations. Elton John's insights underscore the importance of questioning official narratives and seeking accountability, particularly when the stakes involve the loss of human life. As the world continues to grapple with the unanswered questions surrounding Diana's death, her legacy remains as powerful as ever. Elton John's revelations add a new layer to the ongoing discourse, inviting both reflection and action. Whether these theories ultimately prove true or remain speculative, their significance lies in their ability to provoke thought, inspire dialogue, and challenge us to seek truth in the face of uncertainty. The conspiracy theories surrounding Princess Diana's death have persisted for decades, each new piece of information adding fuel to a fire that many believe will never be extinguished. Elton John's recent comments, which have once again thrust the topic into the public eye, offer a fresh perspective on an event that remains shrouded in mystery. His acknowledgement of the possibility that Diana's death was orchestrated by powerful forces brings an even darker layer to the already haunting narrative. His words prompt us to explore not just the specifics of the crash, but the broader implications of what such a theory suggests about our trust in institutions and our understanding of how power operates in the world. Diana's image, both as a royal figure and as a global humanitarian, was not one that could be easily controlled. She often appeared to defy the rigid expectations placed upon her, choosing to highlight causes that were controversial and important. Her campaigns against landmines, her efforts to challenge stigmas surrounding HIV/AIDS, and her deep involvement with disadvantaged communities not only challenged the monarchy, but also exposed the flaws in systems of power that were comfortable with maintaining the status quo. Elton John's comments bring attention to the fact that for some, Diana's influence represented an existential threat. Her potential to disrupt the established order was seen as dangerous, not just for the royal family, but for larger power structures that had everything to lose. One aspect of this broader picture that Elton John's remarks emphasize is how deeply intertwined Diana's personal life became with her public persona. Her marriage to Prince Charles, her very public divorce, and her relationships in the years following her split with the royal family became fodder for constant media scrutiny. However, beyond the tabloid headlines, these events highlighted Diana's growing independence from the very institution that she had been a part of for so many years. Her romantic involvement with Dodi Fayed in particular seemed to be a breaking point. Her relationship with Dodi, a Muslim and a man of Middle Eastern heritage, drew reactions that ranged from disapproval to outright hostility, particularly among factions that feared the monarchy's traditional image being irreversibly changed. Diana's death, then, may have symbolized a desire to prevent further challenges to the monarchy's established norms, which could have had profound long-term implications for its role in modern society. If you liked this video, please give it a like and subscribe to our channel. Also, leave your comments below and tell us, What are your thoughts on Elton John's claims about Princess Diana's death being an inside job? We want to hear from you. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.